I get to work with SpongeBob, Avatar, Ninja Turtles, and Garfield, and some of the '90s Nickelodeon IPs, and I get to create consumer product guides for those.
What's up, Tyler? Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Pentool Pals. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Tyler Pate. I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, art director. About 10 years experience through agency work to freelancing full time to now being art director at Nickelodeon.
Big name, which is awesome too, because I want to get a little bit of your story and understand kind of how you started.
Mhm.
And from what I understand, you went agency route, freelance route, and then now with Nickelodeon, it's kind of like a mixture of the two. But I'd love to hear more about how you got started in design, and then take us through where you are.
Yeah, it's kind of a relatable. More I say it out loud. I'm from South Carolina, small town, small town. I actually looked it up the other night, and I think it's 780 people is the
Wow.
population there. And I would always say, oh, I think it's about like 1,500 or so, and it dawned on me, it's like, yeah, it's really small. But I'm from just a small town in the country, and I grew up loving to draw. I was a creator. I love skateboarding. I was constantly inspired by skateboard graphics and things like that, and that kind of led this pursuit of, wait, these things are being created by people and companies, and why am I so influenced by it? So I pursued design based off of that, and went to school, went to a small university in South Carolina, Francis Marion University, where I got a degree in visual communication. And from that, I just embarked on it. I loved creating logos. Illustrations was a passion, and then website design became that first agency job where I was creating everything from website design to ads to banner ads to creating these well established brands. And I did that for about 5 years in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was awesome. It was a crash course right out of school, and I would still trickle into Instagram and social media. I just found that universe really fascinating and more. I could feel the pulse on it, because everything that I released, every conversation I was having, there was people behind those, and I was able to just keep that going for years to when I made that jump. I made that jump from the agency job, which mom and dad was, are you sure about that? Like,
Right.
what are you gonna go do? I didn't have a huge plan. More so, I saved up enough money to where I could buffer, X amount of months on my own and figure my portfolio out and just jump back into it a different way. But through that, I just picked up more steam from freelance and social media, things starting, to pop off through those different avenues. So where I was getting known for the things I was doing for fun, and then agencies and other brands were wanting me to create the things that I've been doing for fun for them. So that kind of wrapped up a lot of things, and I freelanced for 3 years full time, and that's being contracted to come into an agency for a couple months, or working for a brand for a couple weeks, or even a crash course of you've got 4 days, can you make something happen? And I was just a yes man. I was like, yes, let's do it, let's keep it busy. And that was exciting, and every year was better than the following. So I was constantly on that journey of, all right, this is working, and I got less on edge about those slow periods. It's like, because there's always those slow times with freelance.
So when you were going to leave the agency to do the freelance full time, had you start an Instagram page while you're at the agency, or did you start at? Oh, you did. You didn't start at zero when leaving. So did you have some sort of feeling that this could be a good route for you?
Yeah, I think back on it, and I vividly remember a point where I was almost A/B testing things through social media, and I was doing that with the agency I was with, and I was overlooking their social media at the time, and I was posting there and then posting at mine, and it got to a point where we had to define my role as like, all right, I can't spend too much time during office hours on social
Yeah.
media with their stuff. So, I doubled down. I was like, you know what? Let's see what happens if I really take mine as serious as I was taking theirs. And there's just a big jump of,
Yeah.
creating content, creating video, and I have a huge passion for process videos and just how do things work, because that's what I want to see. I want to
Right.
see like how are you creating those logos? It's fascinating. Are you freaking out whenever you get a brief? Because I freak out. Like I don't know what to do, especially at those times. And I was just sharing it, and
Yeah.
it got to a point where it's like this works. I don't have much other than this is exciting. I think this could be something, and I've already started getting recognized as being an illustrator through that
Hmm.
avenue. So taking that jump, I believed in it, and I believed in, the work that I was creating up at that point. I was like, all right, I just need a shot. That's all I need. So
Yeah.
taking that leap, it's still scary,
Yep.
but I figured, all right, 5 years experience of an agency world, and then all the freelance I've been doing, it'll work. Something will
Yep.
happen.
With a little bit of talent and a little bit of guts, it'll take you a long way. And I mean, you definitely have the talent, and it shows that you have the
Thank you.
guts too. So, I mean, we've been following each other for a long time. I was able to see some of your
Hmm.
rise and success, which has been awesome to see. And when we were talking about showing your process videos, we talked about it a little off screen, but it, I think Tyler literally came up with this, where like this is the true movie magic, where you're just trying to show the end result, but show a little bit of the ways to go about it. And what he would do is like he would group a couple elements together, and he would do it really smoothly, where all of a sudden you get this huge aha moment where all of the art just comes together. Instead of showing like the actual like sweating beads of drip of sweat, and you're like flicking the keyboard and trying to figure out how many things come together.
Yeah.
He just like so smoothly puts it over, and then you have this really cool a moment. So talk me through a little bit more how this video editing style came to be.
Yeah, well, thank you, by the way, because it's so funny. It's evolution for how it came to be. Especially any illustrators out there, you realize there's hours and hours and hours involved in one
Mm,
illustration. And I let the restraints of social media, especially at that time, be kind of the
right,
vessel. I only had a minute. That was
right.
back when we had a minute post.
Hmm.
And I got in the habit where I would sit down at every illustration project and I would just screen record it. So I would have these massive, man, they'd be like 100, 200 megabyte, sometimes gigabyte file, like 2, 3 gigabyte file of
Yeah,
video footage. And I was like, well, what do I do with this? And I was wanting to make tutorials with it, but then I realized like I have to kind of block it up, and I've got to make sure that there's something that not only that a designer will appreciate, but maybe someone's mom would appreciate if they're looking through and they're like, oh,
right.
I like what's going on. What's the big reveal? So that kind of over time, it just started condensing it to where it's like, all right, well, we know that this is using the pen tool for about 5 hours. I don't need to go into the details of that, but here's
Right.
the finished thing. But that's a piece, and here's another piece that I did in the like using a blend tool, and I'll just piece them back together to make that
Hmm.
1 minute video. And that's kind of how it kind of became. It's very organic, but
Yeah.
it works.
Let's talk about the perks of freelance versus the perks of the agency route. While you're actually in the trenches,
Yeah.
you now don't have the salary, but now you're
Mm.
obviously getting a lot of attention from your freelance work, and work is coming in. Which route felt at the time like you were doing the right choice of the wrong?
Yeah, I guess I've always reevaluate whenever I've been in a certain spot for so long.
Hmm.
Um, the agency was like that. I was there for 5 years, and it was one of those things. Looking back, I was like, 2 years, 3 years tops, and let's go from that because I wanted to build that resume, and
Right.
I think a lot of times we just kind of lose track of time. The older I
Hmm.
get, the faster I'm seeing it fly by. And
Definitely.
5 years came through, and then with freelance, it was one of those where, again, it started working, and it started like getting more clients, and then I started seeing that roller coaster of where, you're going to have slow months and then you're going to have busy months. And that back and forth is a revolving door that I had to deal with. When things are busy, I'm sitting there thinking, man, I wish I had more time to do my stuff so I can ramp up, create those videos that we see, because that's usually all of my work typically. And then also I'm able to share more stuff. And when you start to go down the route of agency, or even where I am now with studios, there's NDAs, there's things that really legally prevent you from sharing it. And honestly, there's a lot of people involved. And I try to be really transparent, and I want to give everyone credit for what it is. So sometimes the list is just huge, especially with, working for a bigger company. I mean, you're talking about, there's people creating copy, there's people creating, the character art that's in the work that you're designing. And it gets a bit tricky to throw that into the universe of social media, because a lot of people had their hands on it. And to give credit is how do you list that? I don't even know. So I try
does that prevent you? Say that prevents you from posting some of your work and possibly getting new work because of it?
Yeah, because it's a weird gray area. Because when I post my stuff, people can come to me getting exactly that.
Of course.
And if I start posting too much that's in this universe of agency or studio, well, is that, what's the out goal there, And again, it's for sure portfolio piece. It's going on the website. It's going to probably be a little post here and there, or case study. That's where that's going. But for just the social media content, it's just a different thing that I like to keep separate. But to answer your question, what are the pros and cons? You got a lot of restraints when working in an agency world. But you also have a lot of avenues of what you learn and things that for me, it's a crash course every week of something new on a global scale, or even a micro scale of, well, how are we going to get this out? Or how is consumers going to see this? Or how are we going to print this in a way that we can put it on our D2C store and not have a loss of profit? So there's those analytics that I'm constantly thinking about. But freelance, you're checking in, checking out. 9 times out of 10, you're getting hired on, you're finishing a project, and there's usually a hard finish to where I'm done. All right.
What else is on my plate so that I need to go and search for new work?
Yeah. In the agency world, it's kind of hard to finish, because you'll get roped back in. Yeah. I'm constantly getting emails where it's like, oh, we got some new thoughts, or, oh, we pivoted on something that we finished and improved. So we need you to get back in there and see what we can do.
Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you spoke a little bit about the mindset of both either the freelancer or the salary job. And with the freelancer, it's hard to mentally balance when that next project is going to come through the door. And with the agency route, it's hard to mentally balance the amount of projects your boss is throwing at your desk at once.
Yeah.
I'm sure also the financial part of this, it's a big question in the design industry, of the comfortability of salary versus project per project and freelance. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on the stability of pay versus possibly getting the full pay, but maybe not as often for freelance.
Well, there's pros or cons for everything. I would say for sure the salary and working at an agency or a brand, whatever that is, you get reassurance of a paycheck coming in, which let's face it, a guaranteed paycheck to draw for a living is the best thing you could ever ask for. So you have to really zoom out sometimes. And I'm constantly having to check in with myself where it's, I'm in the cog of a bigger system, but I have that stability. But there's also something to where, what are you doing on your weekends? What are you doing on your off time? Because you get the clock out. Hopefully you get the clock out. And that should be playtime. That should be sitting here and we could draw and we could do whatever we want to experiment. And then that folds back in on itself to where you could bring that into the room at your job and say, well, I did this does work, or I had experience in this style. And you can make that part of your day job too. So that's the corporate side. But if you went freelance, man, you could get paid double what you're getting paid in salary, or you could get paid less. So the reins of where that could go is truly where you want to take it. That's to each your own, but I find that exciting. I find, oh, if it's on my shoulders to go further and to get those clients and I can make it happen, there's no one else to blame but myself. And it's like gives me that that comfort and that ownability, which is nice.
Yeah.
And of course you got the business side to think about. You got a lot of hats with freelance. You got to think about, man, you got to think about health insurance, and you got to think about
Right.
putting money back for taxes,
All
and
the minutia. I know it's tough,
it's
and
something else.
I will say as a whole, and sorry for all the creatives that I generalize in this, but we're not usually the best at
Mm.
money or things that are as
Yeah,
scary as taxes. Let's talk about your start with Nickelodeon.
yeah, yeah. That's another one of those cosmic ones for me because I constantly, again, we have imposter syndrome. We have self-doubt, and that's with my personal brand, the creative pain. That's where that comes from. It's just let's embody it, let's embrace it, and let's figure it out because we're all dealing with it. But the Nickelodeon thing, I was on my third year full-time freelancing, and again, running that gamut of I'm doing branding, I'm doing logos, I'm doing style guides. I have a very plug and play character in a lot of those agency worlds from a freelance standpoint. And man, I look back easily and say that's what I needed to learn. I need to understand, whatever variables in front of you, can you figure it out in the least amount of time and can you deliver consistently?
Mhm.
And can you do that on a caliber where it's enough for whatever that project is? Well, I got a message from a recruiter saying that, and I didn't know the name at the time. And it was like Chris Grohl reached out and recommended you for a Nickelodeon role, and I was just like that. And then I was looking up, and I never met anyone from there, and it was one of those where it's like, okay, I'm interested. What is this? What is this gonna be? And that ended up being my manager and boss today. And I mean, he's an incredible leader. So it's one of those where I'm humbled not only to be on that team, but to be offered and someone reached out and asked and recommended me when I was just over here doing my thing. So if any advice I would ever say to someone wanting to get into it, stay focused on what you're really good at because I was just having a blast just creating and doing the work that I've been doing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it gets noticed over here. And then those are the weird cosmic things where it's like, I don't know who's watching. I'm just focused on the work. And then that happened, and I kept telling myself through the whole process, it's not a thing until it's a thing. So it's not until it's an offer, until there's a letter there. So I kept thinking about it as like, it's something happening here, but through that process, I was focusing on what I had, projects, and I still had timelines and deadlines and things like that I had to look at. So when that finally happened and went through, wow. So I got brought in on being a art director for consumer products for Big Kids Nickelodeon. Long title short, it's I get to work with SpongeBob, Avatar, Ninja Turtles, and Garfield, and some of the '90s Nickelodeon IPs, and I get to create consumer product guides for those. So I'm getting to use all these things that I've accumulated skill wise, illustrating, branding, logos, all this stuff into a uniform job, and it's a dream, man, and it's for a global sense to where I would have never known what it would have been like to been inside because I've experienced freelancing for studios before, and again, you're getting brought in, you do the job, and then you're out. That's how it is now. I'm getting to bring in freelancers. I'm getting to bring in agencies, work with them, have these kind of dialogues where it's like, oh, dude, I love your work. Let's talk about your work and let's see what we could do for SpongeBob, and that's exciting because
So
I'm
exciting.
hopefully giving that opportunity to someone else, but also I'm getting to work with people I want to work with.
Yeah.
And that's one of those. So I'm creeping up on 2 years now, which is crazy to think about. Time flies, and in that 2 years, it gets back to if you're ever thinking like, is this what I should do, or should I be freelance, or is it are you giving up something going to an agency again? No, it's all schooling. Now I know what agencies are looking for freelancers because I'm doing that. And that's the coolest thing.
It really is. I'm curious, are
Hmm.
we similar in age? I was born in 1995.
91. So a
91. All right,
few years, yeah.
we're still 90s kids. You know, talk to me a bit about the nostalgia of being able to look at the cartoons from when you were a kid and now to be able to draw them for a
Oh man, it's still strange to think about because I remember SpongeBob launching in '99. I remember sitting there, and I remember there's different moments where it's like, oh, there's a special, a 1 hour special. Working at Nickelodeon, you can kind of look through the archive, and
hmm
I can look at frames of those episodes, and I'm just geeking out on my spare time, just scrolling through. It's like, oh, I remember this episode, like Doodle Bob, and
Yeah.
so being a big fan of these IPs is exciting, and it's what these companies want. They want the fans to come and work for them because here's the thing: no one's gonna know it better than a fan. And then when you're diving in a consumer product headspace, you're constantly trying to pull out those different moments of,
Yeah.
oh wait, why have we never done this collection with plankton? Why
Right.
haven't we done this? And it's like, okay, well now I can have that debate or that agreement of like, let's throw that in there
I just
and
saw
build it
one of your
out.
recent artworks that totally brought me back with
Hmm.
the pickle guy from SpongeBob. It
Yes,
says, "Where's the pickles?"
bubble bass. Yeah,
I mean,
those moments.
yeah.
Hmm.
So advice you'd give to somebody just coming out of college or just getting into the design space, hasn't had a job yet, whether it be
Hmm.
freelance or agency route. Would you give them the advice to go and get their feet wet, in an agency for a couple years? Or would you say
Hmm.
dive headfirst into freelance and see if it works out? And if it does, great. If not, go back
Yeah.
to agency.
Well, I can speak to myself on that, and I think it really gets back to confidence. If you've got the confidence to go out there and knock on the doors as a freelancer and pursue that fresh out of school, you could make it happen, I'm sure, But for me, I took the agency world, and it's such a crash course, and it's one of those where you get this little bit of a safety net because you're getting the 9 to 5 paycheck, and then you're also having hopefully times to clock out, and you get to explore, and that was the biggest thing that allowed me to jump to freelance is because I was able to expand my own time, what I wanted to do outside of the agency world, and just practice. I vividly remember, and I was able to invest in myself in like I think it was 2015. I bought a Wacom Cintiq tablet, one of the big drawing tablets, and that was one of those things for me. Trying to get the agency I was working with to buy it. There's always budget restraints, There's never someone gonna just hand it to you and say, "Do your thing." But it gave me a point where it's like, I'm gonna invest in myself. I'm gonna buy this thing, take the hit financially, but every day I'm gonna be on it. And I made that very clear. Every day I'm gonna draw something on that thing to make up for it. And for sure, my weekends, I'm going back into the office and I'm drawing some. That's where the creative pain stuff started. I created an outlet. That outlet was where I could do anything I want, and I can have my own restraints to maximize, the growth of me. But that's what worked. But it's tricky to say should you do that or this because it works either way. But you're going to learn a lot if you take that agency or that brand or that company job because you're going to see a business side, and it takes a business to do what we're doing. Even like I said, working at Nickelodeon, I'm seeing how corporations handle freelancers and agencies. I'm also seeing pricing from freelancers and agencies. I mean, how many times are we wondering? I was like, I wonder how much they charge for that.
Yeah.
It's like you get to know that if you work at these companies or if you work at an agency, because then you just make friends with, the finance team or whoever, and you're looking over briefs. Like, I wonder how they pitch that. That's research.
Yeah.
So every day is research, and it's not so foreign.
I do think there is also an important part in this where you said that you bought the the Wacom tablet, and even if they weren't going to pay for it, then so are you. And I think it goes to the larger point that if you're not going to invest in yourself, then how do you expect a client to invest in you? And
Yeah.
what's crazy too is just as a creative, like I myself was like holding off on buying a laptop forever. And like the thing I use every single day, the only thing that makes me money, like how did I hold off so long in buying a new one? And there's all these things in my day-to-day life that like, why don't we just improve it, especially because it's the only thing that's making you money. So I do think that as a designer, think to yourself, like, is this actually going to help me in my day-to-day space? And if it is helping me level up, then invest in yourself, because then other people will see that and invest in you as well.
Yeah, and that gives you less time waiting on a little spin wheel to stop spinning, and that's more time that I can make a stroke with my hand like this rather than a mouse, which is more fluid for my design. So weighing those. So the freelance taught me the business savvy things of if you have something on the side like that, it's a business. You can write things off. Use that. And that's I kind of space it out to where I interchange updating my desktop. I'll wait like 3 or 4 years, then I'll update my laptop, and I just kind of interchange them like that. But I'm not going out and buying new cars. I mean, if you could do that, do it. But I could probably use a new car, but it's not. It's not important because it works.
Car's not gonna make you money.
This is my jam, and it's a magical thing when you enjoy it, and it's hard to really figure out like what is my hobby. And I get asked that, like, what do you do outside of this? I was like, man, I've got way too many overlapping problems with this because I kind of do what I do. That is it,
Right.
More so is like, what do you like to draw for fun? That's the question I need to ask, because that changes. But it's gonna be designing, it's drawing or creating in some medium.
Yeah.
But that investing in yourself it's key.
When you did buy the Wacom tablet and started really diving into your technique and the way that you found your style, talk to me how the Creative Pain, the name began, how your style started to arise, and really how the initial Instagram posts started coming along, and we'll start from there.
So the Creative Pain, it is that embodiment of insecurity, unsure of yourself, but the problem solving. I found out early on working at that agency is when you're starting out and you're young, those insecurities are just so intertwined in your head and you don't really talk about it out loud. At least I didn't. And I'm just thinking like, oh man, I'm struggling. It's because maybe I'm not a good designer, or maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not cut out for this. And then the more people I met and the more interactions with design communities, everyone deals with it. Right. Everyone has like some sort of mental block or a creative block, or trying to figure out, how do I make a logo for some biology department in Nebraska? I don't know, but everyone starts there, and everyone will experience that in this creative field. And what I wanted to do was embrace the pain, embrace that feeling of not being sure, that issue with confidence, and flip it on its head. Because if you embrace it, I started to see things a little bit more focused at that point. It's like, don't think too far ahead with this stuff, one step at a time. And that trust the process comes from that. It's all right, got my logo brief, just kick things off. What do I do? All right, I need to make a mood board. I'm only going to think about a mood board. That's it. We got to define some sort of direction and style. And then from that is, all right, we're going to go into concepting and sketching. I'm only going to think about the fun things that I want to connect the dots with. And then sketching. And it's like step by step, we know this stuff now once we've done it for so long, but sometimes we need reassurance and sometimes we need reminding. And the Creative Pain became that outlet to where you've got to be reminded. You got to understand that we're fortunate to be able to call this a job, but don't second guess yourself. It's got a process to it. If we're having some sort of burnout, that deadline's still there. Yeah. We've got to perform, and we've got to continue to perform at a high level. That's, that's gonna figure out for yourself if you're passionate about it enough to continue to do it. And that's fine. It's fine if this isn't, what you want to do. But I had to figure that out, and manifesting it in this outlet to where I could just create those things for fun in that universe of the creative paint and hopefully inspire and create some sort of dialogue for other creatives. I mean, that's all I need. I mean, things like this, like even you reaching out and talking to me and we're sharing these stories, like that's what moves it forward. That's progression. Because, keeping this to ourselves is just a burden.
I agree. I absolutely love your illustrations, and you do have a cool, consistent theme throughout a lot of it, which, you find really unique ways to reinvent some sort of thing, whether it be bologna or a packet of sauce or, and you say like the creative sauce, or, you have a really fun and unique spin or twist on it. You also have a recurring character that shows up in these different scenes. Talk to me how that character came about.
Well, it for sure. So he has a name. It's Pencilhead. So if you ever think about that, that's simple as it goes. No, I wanted to capture kind of like that childlike sensibility about it, and also this. It's a little goofy. It's a little derpy, like a pug to me when I see a little dog like that. It's like, oh, like, why is that connected with this, or like how is that a dog? But it's one of those where I love this idea where it feels approachable. It feels like we've all been there, and he's always smiling. He's always smiling,
Smiling
and
through the pain.
whether that's a pencil through the head, we're gonna be oblivious to the pain because it's okay. And I wanted some sort of icon and branding system that reflected that in a fun, approachable way. Because I like this child sensibility with that design aesthetic to where it's not too sophisticated. It could have fun joking about itself. It's not going to put it in any sort of box, and it's ever changing. So that's what it's been, and it spoke to me, and I like it in that way.
I think it's awesome. It's also like the inner child in you, especially like it reverts back to what we spoke about earlier about being able to design for a living and to especially design for, and for your circumstance, design for something that was seen as a kid, and the nostalgia bringing back to a channel like Nickelodeon. When did Pencilhead first arrive? Were you drawing him like on your desk as a kid, or did he get developed at a later age?
Oh man, I wish. I mean, it started as one of those little side projects where it's like, for me, I would always create these little series, especially early on in my career, where it's like, oh, this is a style I want, and then it's like, and then I try to attach that to something that I can just expand into 50 variations if I could. And I created, leading up to it, there was like a little food icon style where it's like, all right, just thick lines, 2 or 3 colors, and I expanded it until I was like, oh, I'm exhausted. There's no more I can do. And I stopped, and then I did it with like a little bottle series, or a whole bunch of these little bottles. And it's just having fun in vector. And then I came to this conclusion of like, oh, these little characters, little pet boy kind of things. And then, thinking about Vault Boy, which pretty relevant to today, but video games and that pop culture that I've always been fascinated with cartoons and skateboard brands. You think of World Industry and Wet Boy, or was it Flame Boy and Wet Willie and those little dudes. I love this mascot idea with these characters, and I was like, that would be cool what would that be for a creative? And like playing with this idea of a pencil in his head just made perfect sense. And then I fleshed it out into all these different genres and styles and executions. And eventually 1 or 2 stuck where I was like, all right, this one works. It gives me that vessel of, like you said, reinventing like those illustrations where it's, this is blatantly like a riff off of a ketchup bottle, but what would the creative sauce be? Well, he's going to be the decipherer of the icon that makes it all consistent. Kind of happened like that. And once I thought of the name of the creative pain, it was one of those where, oh, that's got to be taken. And I searched, and nobody had it. And I was like, wow, this must be a calling card. So I was like, all right, this is one of the things I've constantly tried to look for is like, how do I have something that resonates? It's not already taken, the legalities just untouched.
Yeah.
And it worked, and it resonated with me deeply. And talking to other creatives, it resonated with them in the same way without me explaining too much. And I was like, all right, there's something to that. And I mean, even today, real quick, is where does that expand? And that's kind of what it's getting to, where I hope to bring it into more of this workshop element and more of this thing where I can go and give talks about what we're talking about here, and then that's the beacon, that's our little, insignia that we can all relate to, and just bring some reassurance to our process.
Hmm. With the process too, I do see a lot of reoccurring elements within some of your pieces.
Mm,
A lot of it, I like what I always get amazed of, and I don't even know how you do it in Illustrator, really, is your textures. And what you
mm,
do is after everything, because a lot of what Illustrator has is like it being really crisp
mm.
and blocks of color. But at the end of this, you make it feel like that it's this like worn through, gritty, like been ran through,
Yeah.
like it's a candy bar that's been ripped, and like there's a little like a little squiggly of hair that like fell off of
Yeah.
it at the side, right? As if maybe that's the true pain of the
Hmm.
creative, is being it is running through these
Yeah.
pieces. I'd love to hear kind of like some of these specific reoccurring um, pieces or elements of art that you place in there, and maybe if there is any sort of significance of them.
Yeah, that there actually is over time I've emphasized more and more of those details and those distress sensibilities to it, because I got on this road where I didn't want it to feel too sacred. I didn't want it to feel too pristine, and that's not real in a lot of everyday things. Even going to conferences and coming back, and you've got all your posters. It's like, oh man, well, this one's bent, that one's torn, and that sticker's, already like looking pretty messed up. And it's like, well, that's real world. I mean, nothing's perfect. And I like this idea of controlling it as much as I can with Illustrator and Vector, because it's always known, like you said, very crisp and clean, and it's mathematically precise. Those points are exactly where they are, and that part's fun. And then to expand that into textures, sometimes I'm bringing Photoshop around, and I'm, really going at some textures in there to just heighten this illustration and just really give it that extra layer of grit. And just don't want it to feel pristine, because that's not, I don't want to take it too serious in that way. And I think by injecting that, it gives me at least some reassurance. Like, all right, we can make it look as realistic as possible, but that's not what we're gonna do.
Yeah, and
We're gonna destroy it.
I think that's a perfect leeway into maybe the last section where I'll show one of your pieces of the Black Keys tour
Okay.
poster.
Man, this one is really special in the sense that to do a band poster is just mind blowing for me, and to do that also for a band that is one of your favorites, that doesn't exist. Like, to have that pairing, it's just too good to be true. Especially with the idea of, when you're in school and you're starting design, I mean, what's better than a band poster? At least for me, I was just so excited about screen printing early on. So to have this chance, and this kind of go on a slight tangent of the beauty and I think the idea of social media and how connected that can bring us, and who is watching, and and being ready when you're asked, or if you get the moment to step up and do it, got to deliver, and you got to really bring it. So I actually had this project happen because of social media and my work, and things like that. Perry Shaw is an incredible designer, works for Easy Eye Sound, which is the record label for Black Keys. And it's through social media. I started seeing that the Black Keys is going on tour, and I'm like, okay, here's a moment, here's a time where we have different cities and we have different moments to execute something like this. So reaching out and figuring out, okay, what of these tour dates makes the most sense for me? I'm from South Carolina, and this is a place where I used to live. So Charleston, South Carolina. I was like, all right, that's perfect. I love the new album too, and it had a really fun theme of like this collision, like high school bad boy sensibility to it, which is a fun thing to explain and kind of visually depict. So I started this with a couple sketches, pitching that in a presentation to Perry and his team, and just seeing which one resonated with them. Had a couple different options, and I'm just doing rough sketches. And
Yeah.
I never, see myself as like an artist in that sense. Some people are just knocking it out on park with that, but I can depict enough to tell where it's going,
Hey,
and that's
I
what I
think this
did.
is that first sketch got pretty damn close to the final when you're talking about conception. So I mean, kudos to you.
Thank you. So that's where it started. Once it got picked up, and then it's like, all right, what's the concept? So each of the items in that vending machine, so it's a smashed vending machine, if you could tell. So there's like some opportunities to play with lighting and a limited color palette that was pretty tricky. But each of the items in there have some significance to the album. So they're all title names, track names from the album, and a couple Easter eggs. So thinking about concepts, if you're ever doing a poster, finding ways to put that in there, because that's what fans, here's a fan making it. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to kind of like look over constantly, and what makes it unique. So once I established that in the concept, it's just, again, getting to work, head down, illustrating for hours at end, and then really refining it. And this was predominantly the pen tool for me. That's my specialty. Is I love that tool, and it's just so it just feels so linear in the way of executing. And illustrated it, send it off to print, get it printed, get those prints back, sign everything, number it, send it back out to where the location of the gig's going to be. And I actually got to go to this show, which was a really special moment. And I got to bring my brother. So that's another thing who's got me into the Black Keys.
Hell yeah.
So a full circle sin for me, where
Love that.
I was like, dude, this is what design did for me. I can't ask for much more. It's just, it's too good. It's too good for me.
You even got to have the freaking pencil hat in it. I mean, you had your own
You catch
signature
that?
mark. So awesome,
Yeah.
dude. And it really is cool to hear your story, to hear the full circle of the kid watching TV, being able to get inspired by Nickelodeon, then work for Nickelodeon, and then go to be able to do your own thing with the creative pain, and then all the way back to doing amazing art like for the Black Keys and all the other
Thank you.
significant and important clients that you've had. I mean, awesome work. It's been awesome seeing you rise in the ranks. Continue just to crush it. I'm a huge fan of your art.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a pal.
Thank you. Yeah, I like being your pal.